have this conversation. So, and this can be one-on-one, it can be as a team, where you're letting folks know you get the best of me when, ... So you get the best of me when there's a well-defined scope document. You get the best of me after 9 a.m. when I've had enough coffee in my system. You get the best of me when there is a complex problem and you need immediate input. Just really opening up this conversation around you get the best of me when. And then you get the worst of me when. When might that be? And you can count on me too. So this is what you're telling people they can count on you to do. And this is what I need from you. So you're telling folks what you need from them. So this can be a great tool to use where you're sharing your own responses to these questions. And then you're asking your direct reports to respond to these questions as well. It can be really helpful to do this as a team because the team gets to understand each other a whole lot better. And as the manager, you get a sense of, what brings out the best and the worst of this team. So it's a really great exercise. It can be a very fun, 20, 30-minute team conversation and can generate a lot of insight and a lot of data. Just going, there's a question in the chat which caught my eye earlier. I think it referenced weaknesses. So yes, we're not going to be a Pollyanna and ignore weaknesses. Weaknesses matter. And according to the Gallup research, if you focus on developing your weaknesses, the highest level you will achieve is mediocrity. So it's helpful to understand, this particular area of work, is it just an inherent weakness? And should I delegate that to somebody else? Should I think differently about how this work is set up? An example that I'll share is I'm self-employed, and this is the work that I love to do. I love to teach workshops. I love to coach leaders one-on-one. That's the work that I love. What I don't love is sending invoices, reconciling the bank account, doing the tax return, all of that work. Now, there are people who love that, and they do that all day. So what I finally realized after a year of being self-employed and deferring doing this work was that I should probably hire somebody, an independent contractor, who could do this for me. And once a month, we have a phone call. She walks me through the invoices. We look at the bank statement together. I still keep a very close eye on the numbers, so I'm not delegating that responsibility. And in 30 minutes, once a month, it's done. It's taken care of. And I compare that to what life was like before I hired her. I would defer maybe for 3 months at a time doing that work, and it would be taking up way too much psychic RAM in my head. So a great example there of when it comes to weaknesses, think about how might I set up this work differently to really take advantage of not only my own strengths, but the strengths of other people. Another point that I would note on weaknesses is that, and this is mostly in my one-on-one coaching work, typically a manager's biggest weakness is not actually a gap. More often than not, it's a strength either overused or used in an inappropriate context. So by way of example, I was coaching a client who was an achiever, had a real strong pace-setting style. It was phenomenal the amount of work that person could get through in a day, and they really thrived on it, and it gave them energy. And that worked for them and served them very well as a high-performing individual contributor. However, when they transitioned to management, they got feedback in their first 6 months they were driving the team too hard, and the team was burning out. So it's understanding your strengths and how you might calibrate them in service of your leadership. So it might be the case of, okay, this achiever is helping me. And it gets to a tipping point. Oh, no longer helping me. How might I dial this back? So be mindful when it comes to weaknesses that oftentimes, again, we're not ignoring weaknesses. We're being mindful of them. But your greatest opportunity for development is focusing on your strengths and knowing when to dial them up and when to dial them back. Again, like anything, they are tools in your tool belt, and it's important to know when I should dial them up and when I should dial them back. Okay, let's do a little quiz to wrap up this first half of the session, and then we'll take a quick stretch break and come back to the latter half. So go ahead now. We've got a quick quiz here. Yes or no, I will be more successful if I spend more time improving weaknesses than developing strengths? So what do you think? Would you be more successful if you were spending time improving the weaknesses or developing your strengths? Is that a yes or a no? Go ahead and check which box you think is the correct answer. I'll give you a minute or so to do that. Okay, let's see what the poll says. Okay, so the correct answer is no. I will not be more successful if I spend more time improving weaknesses and developing my strengths. So you really want to prioritize focusing on your strengths, developing your strengths, developing the strengths of other people. It doesn't mean that you ignore the weaknesses. Those need to be part of what you're thinking about. But the greatest area for development is really focusing on your strengths. And this is for the entire length of your career. You can develop your strengths throughout the entirety of your career. So no to I will be more successful if I spend more time improving weaknesses than developing my strengths. Okay, next question. People who focus on their strengths are 3 times as likely to report having an excellent quality of life. Yes or no? So think back to that Gallup data, which I shared earlier. People who focus on their strengths are 3 times as nicely done. So it's not we're not saying just totally ignore your weaknesses. That would be a career limiting move. You do want to focus primarily on your strengths. I'm just looking at VC's comment here. Does not limit your skills if you don't focus on getting better at your weaknesses. So you're not ignoring your weaknesses, but you're not building a career around them either. So I remember it was interesting actually whenever I was deciding which college degree I was going to start focusing on. At one point I thought I might do accounting. Now that would not have been a good choice for me because I would have been focusing on getting better at what was a weakness across the board. Yes, TK, jack of all trades and master of none. So you're not building a career around it. And here's a little bit of a Jedi move when it comes to your weaknesses. If you're thinking, I have a weakness in this area, how might I use one of my strengths to help me address that weakness? So an example that I just shared of the bookkeeping, the invoicing, the tracking of the bank account, etc. One strength that I do have is discipline. So when something's in the calendar, it gets done. And I'm good at setting things up and arranging things. So I use my strength, which is discipline and being able to manage my calendar well and finding good talent. I use those strengths to find a great bookkeeper and then to manage the work accordingly. So when you're stuck, ask yourself, how might one of my strengths here help me get unstuck? What might be an innovative way that I could use one of my strengths to help me get unstuck? Okay, next question, yes or no? I can develop my strengths throughout my career. They can be continually developed. So I can develop my strengths throughout my career. They can be continually developed, yes or no? Go ahead and check either yes or no. I can develop my strengths throughout my career. They can be continually developed. Media. I also just pulled this data from Czech Republic, the Great Resignation of last year. So I don't know what your experience is in your organization right now. I know with inflation, recession, the Twitter layoffs last week, which you probably heard about. And then also what I learned about over the weekend that Twitter then accidentally let off people. It's a sidebar conversation and asked them to come back. So think about the great resignation of 2021. I'm curious what it will be today. Is it the same number of folks that are hoping to change jobs, maybe feeling unmotivated where they are? It'll be interesting to see as more data becomes available this year and the next as we work through the high rate of inflation that we have and the recession and everything else that's going on in the world. Another data point, again, from the Gallup folks and their employee engagement work. These percentages have remained pretty constant over time. And it's kind of alarming to see that 66%, so 2/3 of employees are either not engaged or actively disengaged. That is a massive waste of potential, waste of talent. And again, those figures have remained pretty consistent over the years. You've probably heard that phrase that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And as a manager, you've got a great deal of potential impact to set up and establish more engaging, motivational work environments for folks. So let's just check in with ourselves here with this question. I'm curious, what demotivates you? So when you think about either your current job or previous jobs or positions that you've held that were demotivating, what was going on there? So take a moment to reflect and type into the group chat, what demotivates you? What demotivates you? The technically confusing work, negativity, lack of transparency. This is a pretty depressing list, isn't it? Massive priorities, monotonous tasks, boredom. Okay. This is indeed a list of demotivators. So, thinking on the flip side of this question, what is the most motivational thing that someone has ever said to you? So, what is the most motivational thing that someone has ever said to you? What might that be? Type into the group chat. Thank you. Aaron says thank you. You can leave early. You can do this too. You lead. Take your time. Okay to work from home. So again, what is the most motivational thing someone's ever said to you? It's a pleasure collaborating with you. You've got this. I've seen your work and effort. It's a pleasure working with you. Good job. Follow your lead. You really make a difference. You rock. I will take you with me if I change to another job. I leave full confidence the program's in good hands. I trust you. Thank you. What do you think? Good job. Prentice swim was the best time of her life. Fantastic. So some great examples of the most motivational thing that someone has ever said to you. Fantastic. Seeing themes here of appreciation, positive feedback, simple thank you. Wonderful. Okay. So A framework that I find to be really helpful is by Dan Pink. In his book, Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. And he breaks it down into 3 areas. I use the acronym MAP: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. So purpose, and Dan talks about this being, the leading area here. It's the desire to serve something bigger than ourselves. So what is that larger purpose that's at play here? What's the purpose of this spreadsheet? What is the purpose of doing this particular piece of work? If I can attach a larger purpose or as a rationale for doing it, I'm much more likely to be motivated. Mastery, the desire to get better at something that matters. So the majority of people that I meet in organizations, they want to get better at their craft. They want to get better at the work that they do. I don't think I've ever met somebody who's told me that their bar is mediocrity and they just want to get by. So the whole concept of mastery is a critical element here. And then finally, we have autonomy. So the desire we have as human beings to direct our lives. The desire to direct our lives. So I'm curious, as you reflect on your responses to the previous questions about what was either what demotivates you and or what was the most motivational thing that someone has ever said to you, as you reflect on those questions, do they fall into any of these areas? So reflect on your responses to the previous questions and ask yourself, my purpose of being part of it, autonomy or mastery. So reflect on your previous answers and then type into the group chat if they fall into any of these 3 areas, and if so, which one or ones. There might be a couple. So reflect on your answers to the previous question and then ask yourself, do they fall into any of these areas? And if so, which area or areas might that be? And go ahead and type that. MD saying all 3. DK saying autonomy and mastery. So we're seeing all 3, we're seeing a couple, and some single ones here. Mastery, autonomy, purpose, mastery. So we're definitely seeing the application here. Excellent. So I like this framework because it's one you can readily grasp. It makes a lot of sense. And I remember reading the book and reflecting back on those environments that have been really motivational for me and those which had not. And I could just map this model on top of that almost with complete fidelity. So the big question is, as a manager, how do I take each of these areas and translate this into action for me and my team? How can I operationalize this, as it were? Okay, let's take each of these areas in turn. So the first one is purpose. So how to make this practical as a manager. So you're basically setting the context for, with purpose, you're setting the context for mastery and autonomy. So this is all about the context. So ideally, you've got purpose-driven goals. And I love the Dan Pink phrase here: use plain English, or in your own language. Just plain words, human words, focusing on the why. This is why it matters, and have policies that support the pursuit of purpose. Sometimes policies actively get in the way of purpose, so it's important to reflect on the policies and ask yourself, are these policies supporting the purpose? Next up, we have mastery. And this is needed for the engagement or the flow state. So thinking about those times when you're in that flow state, this is what's really necessary, the mastery piece. So as a manager, you're creating the conditions for progress, and most importantly, you're celebrating it. Too often, we're high achievers, we're on to the next thing. It's really important to help, as a manager, recognize when somebody is doing a great job and celebrating it. It was definitely something that I saw as a theme when we asked the question earlier, what is the most motivational thing that someone has ever said to you? There was a lot of that embedded in your comments. It was being celebrated, the great work, the mastery, the progress that you were making. And Dan talks about the 3 laws of mastery. First one is mindset. So we are capable of infinite growth. We used to think that adults, you basically went through the education process until the age of, 16, 18, 21. At that point, you're fully baked and you're good to go as an adult. Research now tells us that we evolve, our meaning making evolves, we grow continually, if we choose to, as adults, and are capable of infinite growth. So it's really having this mindset of we can grow, learn, and develop throughout the entire course of our lifetime. So the mindset is important as a manager. Pain. That, if you're working with mastery, there will be pain. It comes with the deal. If there isn't that pain, if there isn't that persistence that goes along with it, then you're not really stretching yourself. In his book, The Fifth Discipline, Peter Senge breaks down a learning organization, and he uses the metaphor of an elastic band. That when it comes to the pursuit of mastery, there has to be a tension where there's enough of a stretch that, there's some pain involved here. I need to persist over time. But if there's too much, then the elastic band will break. If there's not enough, then there's no tension. There's no there. And then the 3rd law of mastery, the asymptote, that we'll never fully get there. That it is a race with no finish line. That none of us will turn around at the age of 55, 65, 75, 85, 90, or 100 and say, I have fully achieved mastery. It is a never-ending path that we can continually evolve. And then finally, we have autonomy. This is where you're basically giving other folks choice and accountability. You're giving choice and accountability. So where can you give choice? Task, time, team, and technique. So you might have a lot of room to give flexibility here, and you might not. So I just want to put it out there that I understand that each context and circumstance is different. And it can be helpful to reflect as a manager, where might I give increased choice and accountability to my folks? So task is what your direct reports are doing. The time is when they do it. We're seeing that a lot, particularly in the last 2 years. Flexible work, at-home work, hybrid work. Does it have to get done between the hours of 9 and 5? Can it happen at other times of the day? Or, there are circumstances when things are time-bound. They have to be done in certain timeframes, and there isn't a whole lot of choice there. Team is a choice with regards to with whom they do it. Technique, this is probably where folks have the most flexibility, which is in the how. Oftentimes as managers, I know I've been guilty of this. I feel like my way is the best way. And I'm not open to how other people might think about it. But I had to park that pretty quickly as a manager and realize my view is one view, and there are at least 10 other ways this particular task might be done. And it's important to give folks that choice and accountability where possible. And then considering a results-only work environment, or ROWE, you might have heard of this before, where you're telling folks, look, here are the deliverables. Here is the time frame within which they need to be achieved. Now, how and when and with whom you get that done is entirely up to you. What I've heard managers say over the years, that the results-only work environment, they find it to be really helpful to build in milestones and problem-solving reviews so that things don't go too far down a particular line, maybe too late, where you're thinking as a manager, I think you've just wasted 3 weeks of work there. If I knew you were going down that path, I would have redirected you early. So what I've seen with the results-only work environment, the check-ins and the milestones are really helpful to make that work. Another tool that can be really helpful when it comes to motivating others. So this is from the Gallup organization. It's their Q12 framework. This is a tool that you can use, and this is research-based. These are the 12 areas that really can dramatically increase or decrease the motivation of your folks. And they provide, it's a great survey instrument, obviously, but it's also, I think, a great checklist as a manager to reflect and ask yourself, am I setting up a work environment that is most conducive to employee engagement? So do each of my direct reports know what is expected of them at work? Do they all have the materials and equipment to do their work right? Do each of my direct reports have the chance to do what they do best every day, or not every day, the majority of the time? In the last 7 days, did you give recognition or praise for good work? So spotting people doing good things and noting it. That definitely came through in the most motivational thing other people have said to you. So as the manager, you're in a position where you can give that recognition where it's deserved, and that can have a really, really strong impact on engagement and performance. Have you exhibited care as a person for each of your direct reports? Do they know that you care about them as individuals? Is there someone, it could be you, it might be somebody else, who encourages the development of your direct reports? At a minimum, I would hope you're encouraging it and also providing opportunities for development. In what ways might you help your direct reports know that their opinions count? How are meetings set up? How is feedback structured so that folks know that their opinions definitely count? This one might be outside of your sphere of control. Does the mission or purpose of the company make each person feel that their job is important? Sometimes as a manager, you can provide a translational function there where you're helping your direct reports see how, because they might not see how this particular piece of work here feeds directly into the mission and purpose of the company. And as a manager, you could oftentimes help folks see that particular linkage. Is there a commitment to doing quality work? And that speaks to the bar that you set as a manager. Question 10 oftentimes gets a fair amount of pushback. And is that the case? And, what do I do as a manager, with question number 10? And this one is a little bit more outside of your sphere of control, obviously. But according to the Gallup folks, this is a big indicator for your engagement at work. Do you have a best friend at work? Is there somebody who, you enjoy those conversations and you definitely have that friendship? So you can't obviously, tell people to go get a best friend at work in your role as a manager, but you can set up some social interactions, some informal social opportunities where folks will be able to build those relationships. And those do take, particularly with remote work, active scaffolding, active structuring to help enable that to happen. Question 11, that's definitely within your sphere of control as a manager. In the last 6 months, have you talked to each of your direct reports about their progress? Have you had that kind of 30,000 feet conversation about where they are in general and how the work's going and how their development's going? And finally, question number 12, in the last year, have you had opportunities to learn and grow? So again, as a manager, you can set up opportunities. You can invite folks to talk about their growth and development and have a really nice discussion about their ongoing growth and development. And just as a heads up, next Monday, when we get into session 3, I'll talk about some specific ways in which you can do that. Okay. So I'm just going to take a pause and check in on the